Hello and welcome to the interview here on France 24. Our guest today is Rafael Grossi. He is the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN nuclear watchdog. He joins us from the headquarters of the IAEA in Vienna. Thank you very much, Mr. Grossi, for appearing on our program today.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Mr. Grossi, we've seen several incidents around or inside nuclear plants in Ukraine. Russian forces have taken control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, the largest in Europe, on March 4th. This Monday, Ukraine's operator, Energoatom, accused the Russian military of detonating ammunition near a reactor at the plant. We already saw instances of fighting around this plant. Do you have any information on the latest developments?
Well, the situation around this plant has been under observation for a number of years. A number of days now. As you may remember, just a week ago, we had an episode on the night from Thursday to Friday where there was a firefight in a structure adjacent, very near one of the nuclear reactors there. There was fire. The situation was contained. Today, apparently, there has been something else, quite minor, apparently. We are just trying to confirm what happened. But the episode apart, what this indicates is that the situation is extremely volatile, extremely fragile. What you have there is a site containing 6 nuclear reactors, which is under the control of the Russian armed forces. The operators are the Ukrainian operators. But of course, this leads to possibilities of friction, gray zones, zones of tension, maybe confrontation, which are precisely the opposite of conducive to a normal operation of a very sophisticated installation. So we have been following this with enormous interest.
Right. Obviously, there is a concern in Ukraine, in Europe, and even beyond that there could be a nuclear accident. If there is fighting around or inside Europe's largest nuclear plant, that begs the question, are we facing this very dire possibility right now?
Well, it cannot be excluded. And as such, it is absolutely unacceptable. There are certain pillars, principles that apply to any nuclear facility which need to be respected. The protection of the physical integrity of the plant, the external power supply, the functioning of the radiation monitoring systems, the situation of the staff. I mean, there are just a few things that you cannot play with. And in Ukraine, we have seen over the past few days several situations where these basic security guidelines or norms have been compromised, if not completely violated. This is why we need to act, and we need to act now. I have proposed, and I've been in touch directly last Thursday, for example. I went to Antalya in Turkey, and I spoke at length with Foreign Minister Lavrov and Foreign Minister Kuleba from Ukraine. And the IAEA has proposed the establishment of an urgent system, an agreement, a framework agreement on the safety and the security of the nuclear plants, including the possibility of having IAEA experts on site in order to give the necessary assistance and also to ascertain the facts and to separate the real from what is perhaps more hypothetical, which is also a source of deep concern. Because actually what we are having now is the existence of competing narratives or contradictory narratives. One side says we have a big danger and potentially a catastrophic event. The other side will say nothing happens. And the objective instrument and institution to say what's going on is precisely the IAEA. So we are trying to establish these basic things. I have to say that these conversations have been constructive. I think both sides agree that something needs to be done, that the possibility of a nuclear accident is, of course, something that needs to be completely excluded. We haven't been able to come to this agreement. I'm working night and day to get to that.
Right. But obviously, I mean, the pillars that you mentioned have been violated by the Russian forces. I mean, Zaporizhzhia is one example. Chernobyl, even though it's not a nuclear plant nowadays, is also under their control, and there are other plants. Is it your sense that Russia might be trying to gain control over those nuclear plants and not necessarily respect the safeguards that are so sacred for the IAEA?
Well, frankly, I could not know and imagine what the military operations aim at. If I had that information, you can well imagine that I would be acting upon it. I don't have it. What I am telling everybody, and especially in this case the Russians, is that we need to be extremely careful. One thing it's important is that, in my impression, the Russian authorities are very clear, very, very clear. We have been discussing this in very clear terms in our conversations of the dangers and what must be avoided. The problem is that when you have a situation like this, wittingly or unwittingly, you can have situations leading to a nuclear accident. A nuclear accident will not necessarily occur because a missile will be aimed at a nuclear reactor. This is a scenario which is highly improbable. However, what may happen is that some installation that the power lines feeding the cooling systems of a nuclear reactor are affected, and then you could have a situation or a scenario leading to a nuclear accident. And this is where we need to act preventively, if I may.
Right. Are you ready to travel to Ukraine?
Yes, of course, I have said it. I am ready to travel now, if possible. We are really expressing our disposition to deploy immediately.
Right. I want to turn to the other main topic that I imagine you're working on, the nuclear talks with Iran. There were talks apparently quite productive in Vienna. There was a pause in recent days, and there was concern that Russia might try to torpedo this process. However, this Tuesday, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said we were in the home stretch of the negotiations, and maybe more importantly, that he had received written guarantees from the US that the sanctions imposed on Russia because of the Ukraine invasion would not affect Russia's trade with Iran. Does that make you optimistic that we are really on the verge of a deal on Iran?
I think we are. The problems that emerged in the past few days were, of course, real, because with the introduction of a number of sanctions, restrictions that came as a consequence of the situation in Ukraine, some of the actions and activities contemplated under the JCPOA became all of a sudden under a cloud of a doubt. You know, the JCPOA is extremely complex instrument that has a number of limitations, things that Iran shouldn't do or couldn't do. But at the same time, it has some incentives, some cooperation, technical cooperation projects and things that could be facilitated in Iran under the inspectors of the IAEA and carried out in cooperation mainly with China and Russia. And all of a sudden, since these activities are activities of a commercial nature that require buying equipment, exchanging expertise, etc., which could potentially fall within the realm of these sanctions, all of a sudden this part appeared to be in doubt. And this is what caused this sudden pause, doubt, need to go back to the drawing room and see what can be done. I'm very glad to hear that Foreign Minister Lavrov is saying that he has received this information from the United States. I hope we can have this agreement soon and start working. My inspectors are ready to go.
Right. You went to Tehran recently. Do you think that there is really now, on the technical standpoint, really a framework of agreement to work with Iran, and that the only thing that's needed is the diplomatic go-ahead?
I think what you say is correct. I wouldn't like to minimize what needs to be done. What we have with Iran is a way forward. The scheme, the roadmap, if you want, that we need to follow and to clarify step by step a number of things that need to be clarified. I hope we can do it. It will be a lot of work ahead of us, but I believe this is the way forward at this time, particularly now that we have all these other unexpected and very painful conflicts like the one in Ukraine. I think we need to, at least on this front, have some certainty, some stability, work for peace.
Rafael Grossi, I want to thank you very much for appearing on the France 24 interview, and thank you all for watching this edition. Stay tuned for more news.